draw the line in the dust and toss the gauntlet before the feet of tyranny. And I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever.
In 1963, Southern segregationists got a new rallying cry, and the civil rights movement gained a new arch-villain. But even as Alabama's incoming governor, George Wallace, invoked the spirit of the Confederacy, movement leaders were preparing to challenge segregation and racial hatred in the state's largest city, Birmingham. Like many Southern cities, Birmingham was struggling to throw off its racist legacy.
You've got to keep the white and the black separate, just like you got to keep them in school.
The town's top police official, Eugene Bull Connor, embodied the entrenched prejudice of the Old South. He had given Klansmen free rein to beat the Freedom Riders in 1961, just as he allowed them to persecute Birmingham's black population and firebomb their homes with impunity. By 1963, the public outrage sparked by the Freedom Rides and other high-profile civil rights demonstrations had disappeared. The movement needed to provoke the kind of newsworthy confrontation that would capture headlines and TV screens. If you're looking for a fight, Martin Luther King was told, you're sure to find a good one in Birmingham. King and the SCLC launched Project C on April 3, 1963. The C stood for the Confrontations, designed to bait Bull Connor into outrageous action. 9 days in, the campaign was in trouble. Martin Luther King had been arrested for violating a court order and was languishing in jail. It was here that he penned his famous Letter from a Birmingham Jail, concluding that one day the South will recognize its real heroes. King was released from jail on April 20th to find the Birmingham movement in peril. With few adults willing to risk jail time, the city's black youth rose up and marched into history. At 1 o'clock on May 2nd, D-Day, a group of students emerged from the 16th Street Baptist Church singing, "We Shall Overcome." Hundreds were arrested and loaded onto school buses destined for the city jail. The next day, Bull Connor called in the fire department and K-9 units. Teenagers and children became targets for high-pressure water hoses and snarling police dogs. News reports and images from Birmingham spread like wildfire. The New York Times called the events a national disgrace that made a mockery of the legal process. A letter to the Washington Post read, "If the United States doesn't stand for some decent average level of human dignity, what does it stand for?" Day after day for a week, the scene was replayed. Bull Connor filled the jail and then the county fairground with thousands of youthful prisoners. But still, more came. Birmingham business leaders finally agreed to negotiate. Within days, an accord was reached to desegregate the city. Events in Birmingham shone a hard light on America's race problem and influenced many citizens to re-examine their own views on the issue. Among them, President John F. Kennedy. 1 month after the Birmingham settlement, the president made an unprecedented statement on national television.
Next week, I shall ask the Congress of the United States to act, to make a commitment it is not fully made in this century to the proposition that race has no place in American life or law. The old code of equity law under which we live commands for every wrong a remedy. But in too many communities, in too many parts of the country, wrongs are inflicted on Negro citizens and there are no remedies at law. Unless the Congress acts, their only remedy is the street.
The president's call for federal civil rights legislation held staggering implications. but the opposition remained intractable and dangerous. The president was forced to use federal troops to ensure the admission of James Meredith, the first black student to attend the University of Mississippi in 1962. In Alabama, Governor George Wallace, who had promised segregation forever, staged his historic Stand in the Schoolhouse Door to oppose the integration of the University of Alabama. Only after federal troops arrived on orders of the president did Wallace relent, allowing Vivian Malone and James Hood to enter. And just hours after President Kennedy called on the nation to embrace civil rights, NAACP Field Secretary Medgar Evers was gunned down at his home in Jackson, Mississippi. Jim Crow was on the run, but he remained armed, dangerous, and determined to die in a blaze of glory.